Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yadadai dai 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 Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. Yada die 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 die. We continue on your song sheets. A song from Israel, Erev Shel Shoshanim. We welcome in the mystical Shabbat into our midst. Erev Shel Shoshanim, Nitzena el habustan, Bor v'samim ulevona, Leraglech miftan. Laila yored le'at, Veruach Shoshan hoshva, Haba el chashlak shir balat, Zemer shel ahava, Shakarom hayona, Roshek malet lalim, Pikel haboker shoshana, Ektefen huli. Laila yored le'at, Veruach shoshan hoshva, Haba el chashlak shir balat, Zemer shel ahava. Continuing our Kabbalat Shabbat, Zamru ladonai b'chinor. How do we welcome Shabbat? The sound of the instruments. It lets us know that Shabbat is approaching, and we're grateful for this moment together. Page 16, Zamru ladonai b'chinor. Zamru ladonai b'chinor, b'chinor v'kol zimra, b'chatzotzrot v'kol shofar. Hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, Yiram hayam omlo, Tevel veyoshveva, Neharot imcha ochaf yakad, Harim yiranenu, Lifnei Adonai kiva, Lishpot haaretz, Yishpot tevel b'tzedek, V'amim b'mesharim, Yiram hayam omlo, Tevel veyoshveva, Arot imcha ochaf, yachad arim yeranenu.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's nice to see so many of you. Welcome back, and welcome to those of you who have been coming. You make Shabbat for us, and it is truly beautiful to be together as a community. So this is a special Shabbat. They all are, but this one has a special name. It's called Shabbat Chazon. So Shabbat Chazon, it's the Shabbat of vision, so called for our Haftorah portion, where Isaiah actually warns the Jewish people to change their ways or destruction is coming. And we read it in this time as we approach Tisha B'Av, which we will be commemorating on Monday night. So Tisha B'Av marks the anniversary of the loss of the first and the second temple and other moments of destruction in the history of the Jewish people, including the spies as they scouted out the land. So Tisha B'Av is this moment of mourning, of darkness, and it can feel, even if you didn't know it was Tisha B'Av, it can feel like the world is getting darker. And we look at what's happening in Israel, what's happening with the politics, how divided we are, and the hatred and the rise of anti-Semitism, and we can feel this darkness. And so I wanted to share that Rabbi Berdichev actually said, no, don't call it Shabbat Chazon because of the warning of the prophet Isaiah. Call it Shabbat Chazon because on Tisha B'Av we see a glimpse of the third temple. Sorry. So on this Shabbat, we also get a glimpse. We get a glimpse, not of the third temple, but the rabbis say we get a glimpse of what heaven is like. So I invite you to let go of all of the worries of the week and the darkness in the world and just enjoy Shabbat as we bring in light. So I'd like to invite Nita and Frank to help us come and kindle our Sabbath lights.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner, lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
We mark this day as holy.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hakafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinkilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom tehila lemikrae kodesh, zekel yitziat mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim. Thank you for helping us bring in Shabbat. We're going to continue with Lecha Dodi on page 20.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zokor b'nimur echad ishmianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem tiferet v'litekila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechoven elecha ki mekor habracha merosh mikedem nesucha. סוף מעשה במקשבה תקילה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, כי בעורק ומיורי אורי אורי שירברי. כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
If you're able, please rise as we face the door to welcome in our Sabbath bride.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי כלה, בואי כלה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
I invite you to remain standing as we turn to page 28 for our call to worship.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Yada die, die, die. 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 Barechu et Adonai, Hamev Adonai, dai, dai. Yada, dai, dai, dai. Yada, dai, dai, dai. Yada, dai, dai, dai. Adonai, dai, dai. Yada, dai, dai, dai. Yada, dai, dai, dai.
Please join me on the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
We can be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Finding light in darkness, our rabbis also teach us that Tisha B'Av, this day of destruction, is the day on which the Messiah will be born. So let's look for good and opportunity and how the darkness we experience can actually help us to make the world a better place. When our ancestors were in Egypt, they needed hope, they needed inspiration, and they truly created light while the rest of Egypt was in darkness. So let's sing for our freedom, page 40.
Yai dai dai ya dai da 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 dai ya dai da dai ya dai da 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 dai ya dai da dai dai ya dai da da dai ya da dai dai ya da 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 dai mi kamo kava elim Adonai mi kamo kane darba kodesh nora tehilot o sefele nora tehilot o sefele Malachotcha ra'u banecha bokei yom lifnei Moshe u'Miriam zelianu ve'amru zelianu ve'ameru Adonai ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ידי די ידי דה 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 ידי דה דה ידי דה 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 ידי ידי די ידה דה 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 ידה די די ידה ידה די די ונאמר כבוד אדוני יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Let's give thanks for the beauty of Shabbat, page 44, Vishamru.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, שבס לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, שבס לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Woo! Okay. Please rise for the tefillah, page 46.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agite hilateka. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'hanora El Elyon Gomel Chassadim Tovim V'konei HaKol V'zocher Chassadei Avot V'imahot U'mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava melech ozer umoshia umagen. Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham vezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, mekayem metim atah, Rav lehoshia, morid hatal. Mikalkel chayim bekesed, mekayem metim berakamim rabim. Sohomei knofelim verofei koholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar, mikamo kabal gevurot, umidom elach, melech memit umekaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lekayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, mekaye hametim. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, ukeroshim b'kol yom yalelu kasela. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
We continue now with our own personal prayers. When you are done, please be seated.
מחר אולי בכל המשאלים ארי בעדר צאן ינחג. מחר יקום באלף ענבלים המון פעמונים של חג. כל זה אינו משל ולא חלום, זה נכון כאור בצהריים. כל זה יבוא מחר אם לא היום, ואם לא מחר אז מחרתיים. מחר כשהצבא יפשוט מדיו, ליבנו יעבור לדום. אחר כל איש יבנה בשתי ידיו את מה שהוא חלם היום. כל זה אינו משל ולא חלום, זה נכון כאור בצהריים. כל זה יבוא מחר אם לא היום ואם לא מחר ואם עוד לא מחר ואם עוד לא מחר אז מוקרת
As Rabbi Greengrass mentioned, Tisha B'Av is coming up. Tisha B'Av begins Monday night, and it's as she mentioned, the day when both the first temple in 586 BCE and then more than 500 years later, the second temple, by this incredible coincidence, more than 500 years apart, were both destroyed on the very same day. And a lot of horrible things have happened on that day as related to anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews ever since. There's another one I know already that's coming up this week. Tisha B'Av begins Monday night and then will be on for the day on Tuesday until sundown. And Tisha B'Av is a fast day. So next Tuesday, I'll be in New Orleans. We take our daughter to college for her first day, and so here we are going to the culinary capital of the world on a fast day. This is pure anti-Semitism. It's college campuses, you know. Just came back from Israel. Sharon, Levy, our executive director, and I were there for 5 days with the IDF, touring different facilities and meeting with different members of the army and learning about what's really going on. And one of the places that they took us was to a hospital where we got to meet some of the injured soldiers. And this is something that I did 5 months ago as well when Rabbi Aklepi and Sharon and Nora Anderson, the head of our day school, and Tamara Donenfeld, the head of yours, when we went together, we went to a hospital in Beersheba called Soroka. And the reason we went there was to meet with some of the doctors to hear about how they dealt with all of the victims and the injured on October 7th. But Nora Anderson, our head of school, knew someone who had a family friend who was a soldier who was injured terribly in Gaza, and he was there in the hospital, and could we go visit him? So we went away from the group and we went upstairs to visit. We didn't know anything about this family, and when we got up there, we found out we couldn't see the soldier because he was in surgery, but we could visit with his parents. So we went to meet the parents, and they told us the story that their son was fighting in Gaza and was now in his 9th surgery. He was still in a coma. They hadn't been able to talk to him. And when he woke up and out of the coma, they weren't sure what his cognitive state would be. They didn't know if he would be able to function at all. He lost both legs and an arm. And here we were talking to his parents. And they were incredible. And when I got back, I told someone that I knew about him, and this person knew a congressman named Brian Mast. Now, Brian Mast is a congressman who is not Jewish, but actually served in the IDF and served in the United States Armed Forces and lost both of his legs in Afghanistan. Today he's a congressman. And he heard about this soldier, and he made a video of inspiration to send to this soldier, and it got sent to me. And I had this video from this congressman, but I said, I'm never going to see this kid again. So I just had it in my phone, and I figured I don't know if I'm ever going to get to, I didn't know how to get in contact with this guy. And so I just carried it around. And meeting with his parents really, really stuck with me. You know, in many ways, you know, walking through Israel, as we did last week, walking through Kfar Aza, one of the kibbutzes in the south along the border of Gaza, was like walking through the streets of a pogrom in the 1800s. It was like walking through a Chaim Nachman Bialik poem. It was like walking through the killing fields of the Holocaust. But the difference was that this is 2024, and this wasn't Europe. This was in Israel, when we have our own state and our own army. And what you could see was pure hatred, pure anti-Semitism, pure evil. Well, this week will be the first Tisha B'Av, the first national theological day of Jewish mourning since October 7th. Now, it always happens that we start this new book of the Torah, Deuteronomy, the week of Tisha B'Av. It's incredible that that happens. What's so special about that? Well, what is Deuteronomy? Well, it's the fifth book of the Torah. But what it really is a collection of Moses' sermons to the Jews before he dies and they go in to enter the land of Israel without him. And the way he starts off these sermons, which is the book of Deuteronomy, is by saying, you know why it took us so long to get here? By the way, the Torah says, you know how long it's supposed to take from Mount Sinai to Israel, according to the Torah? 11 days. It took 38 hours. It's like you're booked on Delta or United. That's how long it took. I went on LO. I was fine. Because other people are still waiting. Idiots. It took 38 years after the giving of the Torah because of the sin of the spies. What was the sin of the spies? Moses sent 12 spies to Israel. 10 of them came back and said, we'll never be able to conquer it. The people there are too numerous. They're too big. We'll never be able to defeat them. They turned their back on God. They turned their back on the land of Israel. And all of the people, except for the Levites, joined in with them. And God said, fine, you don't want to go? You won't go. You'll wander for 38 years and you'll die, and only your kids will go in. Well, that day, that sin of the spies was Tisha B'Av. And what did they create on that day? They created vulnerability for the Jewish people that would last forever. And it's been horrible on that day ever since. In 1290, the Jews were expelled from England on Tisha B'Av. In 1492, we were expelled from Spain on Tisha B'Av. World War I began on Tisha B'Av. The Warsaw Ghetto was liquidated on Tisha B'Av. The death camp Treblinka began its operation of murdering Jews on Tisha B'Av. In this week's Torah portion, we learn why. We went to the darkest place. And the Torah, Moses uses the word sin'ah, a hatred that the Jewish people had for God and for the land of Israel, which created a kind of darkness that could make what we saw last week in Kfar Aza, at the hospital, at the scene of the Nova massacre possible. But like Rabbi Greengrass said, there's a bit of a paradox in this week's Torah portion and in the way that we understand what Tisha B'Av is. Because while the Torah portion reminds us that because they sinned, the sin of the spies, this horrible day of Tisha B'Av, the darkest time, the worst thing that could happen, came into the world, so did this week's Haftarah. This week's Haftarah, which Rabbi Greengrass mentioned, comes from the book of Isaiah, and it's called Shabbat Chazon. Chazon means vision. Because at this moment, when we're at our most darkest point, when the world seems as bleak as it could possibly be. And by the way, we felt this way. When October 7th happened, and we said it's not safe to go to Israel. And then all of the anti-Semitism happened here, and we said it's not safe to be here. We asked ourselves, where can we go? Where are we safe? Where can we be accepted? This was the bleakest moment for the Jewish people that I've ever seen in my lifetime. But the paradox remains. Shabbat Chazon, Tisha B'Av, the darkest time, is called also the Shabbat of vision, that there is something to see. According to Hasidic thought, the rabbis believed that it is precisely and paradoxically when we are at our most vulnerable that we seek God and God seeks us. It's on this Shabbat, before we get to Tisha B'Av, that we're actually supposed to see a vision, not of the first temple that was destroyed and not of the second temple that was destroyed, but the temple that is described in the book of Ezekiel, the third and final temple which will never be destroyed. You know, you could walk around all over the world and find Jews. We know that because there's a Chabad in every city in the world. Right, you can go to Timbuktu. There's a rabbi waiting to give you tefillin. It's amazing. There are Jews everywhere. But you know where there's not? If you ever read through the Bible, see all the other nations, the Amorites, the Edomites, the Jebusites, the Hittites, the Hivites. There are no Jebusites in Kansas City, right? There are no Hivites in Indianapolis. But wherever you go, the one nation that everyone's been trying to kill all this time, for some reason we're still here. Psalm 130, the famous line, "From out of the depths I cry unto you, O Lord." What King David was writing is, in my most vulnerable times, when it looks like it is so dark and so bleak, it's in that moment that I find you, O God. Why is that? You know, if you ask any Jew, if you ask anyone who knows a little bit about the Torah, you ask, how long were the Jews slaves in Egypt? For whatever reason, we have this number in our head. The Jews were slaves for 400 years. Have you ever heard that before? If I asked you how long the Jews were enslaved in Egypt, you'd say, how would I know? Right? No, you'd probably say, hopefully 400. But the answer is, it was only 210 years. So why does everyone always say 400? Because in Genesis, God told Abraham, your people will be slaves for 400 years. But when you get to Exodus, we find out that it was only 210. We need a reason why. And the answer is that the Jews had descended to such a low stage. They had reached such a level of impurity that if I got, as the Zohar explains, they were at the 49th level of Tumah, the 49th level of impurity. And if they got to the 50th level, they'd no longer be recognizable as Jews. And God said, they're so low, it's so bleak, it's so dark. If I don't give them a vision now of redemption, we'll never see them again. And so what happened? After 210 years, God went back and said, I told Abraham 400, but we've reached the bottom. And they need a vision of me. And it was in that moment that Moses came to Egypt to redeem the Jewish people. This happens to us on an individual level as well. In mystical understandings of Judaism, we understand that it's when our bodies get weaker that our souls get stronger. And actually, when you get older and you're coming towards the end of your life, the reason your body gets weaker as you get towards the very end of your life is because the soul inside of you is getting stronger. And the reason the soul gets stronger is because it senses that it's getting closer and closer to going back to heaven. It's that strength of soul that weakens the body. And it's when we're at our sickest, in our most bleakest and darkest moments, that our soul is actually communicating with God at the highest level. Psalm 130. Out of the depths, O Lord, I cry out to you. In Israel last week, I saw so many images of suffering. One of the most powerful moments came when we went to a hospital, not Soroka in Beersheba in southern Israel where we went 5 months ago, but this time to a hospital called Sheba Tel HaShomer in Tel Aviv. I'd never been to this hospital before. We went to meet with injured soldiers. The first time I was in a hospital, it was to meet with the doctors who talked about how difficult it was to deal with so many injured soldiers arriving all at once on October 7th, October 8th, and so forth. But this time, the war had been on for a long time, and we were able to meet with soldiers. There are hundreds of soldiers there who are seriously wounded. Now, seriously wounded, you think seriously wounded, and you think, well, maybe they broke their ankle. Maybe they tore a rotator cuff. These are not pickleball injuries. These are injuries of serious injury means you lost an arm, or you're blind, or you're deaf, or your spleen exploded. These are really, really struggling soldiers. So we went into this room, a little hall, and they brought in 3 soldiers. One came in a wheelchair. He had no legs and only one arm. The other 2 had walking canes and all kinds of contraptions coming from their body, holding bones in place. And all 3 started to tell us their story. The first soldier, who was in the wheelchair, pulled up and started to speak to us. He looked to me like a little kid. He looked so young. I couldn't believe he was old enough to be in the army. I go to Israel a lot. The older I get, the younger the soldiers look. Have you ever noticed that? When he finished speaking, he told us his story. He told us about his unit. He told us about a little bit about his family, and he told us about the mission he was on and what happened to him. He didn't remember hardly anything. He'd lost both his legs and his arm, and his other hand was badly wounded too. As he finished speaking, his dad poked his head into the room because it was time to take his son upstairs for rehab. Sharon was sitting right next to me, and Sharon caught a quick glimpse of his dad. And he turned to me and he said, That's the guy we met with in March. Remember the guy we saw in the coma? I said, it can't be. There are a million soldiers here. That was a different hospital in a city far from here. It can't be. So we knew that the soldier who was speaking to us, we knew that his name was Ari Spritz, and because he had just talked to us. And we quickly started looking through our emails to see what was the name of the soldier that we saw back in March. Finally, we found an old email that Nora sent us about the family that she knew, and we saw that the soldier who was injured in Soroka and Beersheba that day that we saw, that his name was Ari. I turned to Sharon and I said, oh my God. This guy who just spoke to us is the exact same soldier we saw whose parents we met with 5 months ago when he was still in a coma and they didn't know if he would ever come out of it. Quickly, we ran out of the room and we started to look to see where he was. We wanted to go talk to him. And I had that video from the congressman that I wanted to show him that I never thought I'd ever get to see, to show to him. By the time we got out in the hall, they were gone and we couldn't find them. And I said, Sharon, this hospital is enormous. There's no chance we're ever going to find him, if it's even him. But then there was a woman who was like the liaison to the hospital who was with our group, and we told her the story, and she said, we've got to find him. So she got on the phone, and a few moments later, they told us he was on his way to rehab. We went upstairs with her. She took us to the room, and we waited, and a few minutes later, the son came in, rolling in his wheelchair with the father right behind him. And I looked at the father, and I said, oh my God. Sharon said, I don't know if you remember us, but I want to show you something. And they looked at us like, we're nuts. Who the heck are these two? Sharon took out his phone, and there was a picture of this man and his wife standing with Rabbi Aklepi and me and Sharon and Nora and Tamara. And he said, I don't know if you remember, but just after your son was injured, we came to visit you and we spent time with you at Soroka Hospital. And they were dumbfounded. Now, the soldier was in a coma back then. He certainly had no idea who he was. And I said to him, you have no idea who I am. But I've been carrying a video around for 5 months waiting to show you. It looked like I was annoying him and he wanted to get to rehab. But I said, please bear with me. I took out the phone and I showed him a personalized video from an American congressman to him. And at the end, the congressman invited him to come visit him in D.C. whenever he was able to. We invited him to come to Miami to visit us here as well, although it's going to be a long time before he's able to travel. In March, I remember asking his parents, how are you staying so strong? They really were. And they said from the moment they heard about the extent of the injuries, when they got that call, to the unbearable months that followed, in their distress, they made a decision that they were going to look for the light at the end of the tunnel. When we saw them in March, they were at their lowest point, searching for a glimmer of light. Ari was in a coma. He was in his 9th surgery. They didn't know what cognitive state he would be in, if they would ever be able to really even have a conversation with him again. Last week, 5 months later, and before I realized who Ari was and that we had met his parents, I asked him, what are your dreams for the future? And he said, I want to get on with my life and look forward to a meaningful life here in Israel just like everybody else. And so it is with our people. From expulsions, to ghettos, to death camps, to this war against terror, and to these new waves of anti-Semitism. It's in moments like these when a vision of a better future is most clear in our eyes. And it is the reason that after all these millennia, we Jews still remain loyal to our sacred covenant. As the Jews were about to enter into the land of Israel, Moses' pep talk to them began with the story of what it was like at our bleakest and most darkest moment. Not always the greatest way to start a pep talk, but what Moses knew was it was in that moment when the light of God shined most clearly to the Jewish people. And if they were going to enter into the land of Israel and seek that light, they had to be reminded from where they came. This past week, seeing Ari again and being reunited reminded me of from where we've come since October 7th and where we stand today. On this Tisha B'Av, in just a couple of days, it'll be one of our most painful Tisha B'Avs since the Holocaust, if not the most painful. The amount of new victims of terror and anti-Semitism we've added to the list this year, we haven't had numbers like this since the Yom Kippur War, and before that, since the Holocaust. But when the sun goes down on Tuesday night, we come back to Psalm 130. It's from those depths, when we get that low, that we cry out to God. And so it is on this Shabbat, before we prepare for Tisha B'Av, that we're granted the gift of Shabbat Chazon, that God recognizes now more than ever we need a glimpse of His light. May we each merit this profound glimpse of the better times that are coming for us and that lay before us. Ken Yeh Ratzon. May this be God's will. Amen.
When we think of loved ones who need healing, whether it be a physical healing, spiritual healing, all of that, all kinds of healing, we know that it takes vision to go from where we are in an illness to where we would like to be being well with a full recovery. Whether we are involved in recovery from addiction, there needs to be a vision. Whether it's COVID after 3 days, there needs to be a vision. And those visions of Shabbat Chazon, a vision for the future, is the way that we think of healing as well. If you have loved ones that you're thinking about this evening and you would like to share their names for our prayers of healing, please raise your hand up high. Thank you. Noah? Thank you. Ed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Lana. We ask God's healing. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh hacholim. Blessed are you, Adonai, healer of the sick.
Dear God of our ancestors,
Dear God of our ancestors,
help us renew our faith.
help us renew our faith.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Bring peace to all our days.
Bring peace to all our days.
And rifana lanhu. And rifana lanhu. Restore our strength of body.
Restore our strength of body.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Help clarify our minds.
Help clarify our minds.
Rejuvenate our light.
Rejuvenate our light.
And rifana lanhu. And rifana lanhu.
If you are comfortable to rise, please do so as we turn to page 282 for the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גאולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom we have taken into our heart with our own, the martyrs of our people, those whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember on them, we meditate on the meaning of life and death, of love and loss. It is our custom here at Temple Beth Am that when you hear your loved one's name called from the bima, that you rise and stay standing through the mourner's Kaddish. On this Erev Shabbat, we send condolences to the family of Sue Clow. In the tradition of 30 days of mourning, we speak the names of Judith Wexler, Myrna Albert, Maura Sharon, Abraham Mizrahi, Susanna Cohen, Donna Barist, Phyllis Simkovic, David Ellis Mellon, Shirley Warman. We're remembering those who have passed during the last year. William S. Aschenbaum, Ella Riley Adler, Michael Arnold, Patricia Barrett, Peter Bass, Jerry Benjis, Sol Victoria Amar Den Benhamu, Constance Miller Bennett, Robert Bob Blumenthal, Barbara Bronfman, June Elizabeth Brown, Bernard Eckstein, Herbert Fink, Tina Forster, Lawrence Larry Stewart Foreman, David Frankel, Anne Friedlander, Mitchell Mitch Friedman, Glenn Goldberg, Dr. Warren Janowitz, Dr. Ira Carmen, Howard Kleinberg, Janice Levine, Alice Levy, Ellen Ellie Levine, Joyce Hessel Mackler Fisher, Reba Eskowitz Maggots, Asuka Mashav, Elisa Poyastro, Lenore Raven, Karen Michelle Solomon, Dr. David Saracen, Anna Sheldon, Max Spiegelman, Ilya Stolyar, Berta Topel, Irene Trupkin, Dr. Florence Oren Wexberg, Joan Wolfe, Burton Young, Enrique J. Zadoff, Daniel Salzberg. On this Erev Shabbat, we are remembering our loved ones whose yahrzeits occur at this time. Patricia Burke, Ernestine R. Germain, Daniel Neal Heller, Ava Chris, Evelyn S. Shearer, David Sokol, Dr. Harris. If there are other people that we are remembering this evening, please share your name. Thank you. Anybody else? Zichronam Levracha, may their memories be a blessing to all of us. We turn to page 294 and we join in the Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha b'rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'emru. Amen. May the one who causes peace to rain down on us from the high heavens, may God send peace to all Israel, to all the world, and may God send comfort to all who are bereaved among us. Together we say, Amen. You may be seated. We invite, representing our Temple Beth Am Board of Directors, Judy Cowan, for words of Shabbat greeting. Thank you for being here tonight.
Shabbat Shalom. First of all, thank you to our clergy, Rabbi Greengrass, Rabbi Kleppe, and Rabbi Barris for sharing your story about Israel. It's amazing the resilience that those IDF soldiers have, and for reminding us that we all need to have a vision in the darkest times. So, and I'm sorry, thank you, Leora, for your beautiful music, which enhanced Cantor Flaxman's beautiful voice. Thank you both very much. So there's always a place where you are welcome, and that is Temple Beth Am. And please remember to renew your membership. Rita Diaz will be very, very happy if you do. You may do it online. You can go to Rita's office, or you can send in the form that you received in the mail. And while you're online, you can join Sisterhood or Brotherhood, two very active organizations in our temple. If you have loved ones whom you would like to be included in our Book of Remembrance, you have until August 15th to do that. If you filled out your bingo Shabbat cards, Shabbat bingo cards, you are entitled to a wonderful reward if you send me a picture of your bingo card. For more information, see the temple happenings for my email address. We have a new program starting on Monday. It's called Talk It Out. It's spearheaded by one of our congregants, Pamela Lear. It's congregant run, and it's a place to share ideas, and every week they will discuss new topics. Tikkun Olam has their first meeting on August 19th. It's a potluck dinner. If you are interested, they do marvelous things during the year. Go to the website and sign up. If you have not seen Suite 15, My Kinsera, it is in the Hub. It is a Broadway-worthy performance. Both Rabbi Greengrass and Rabbi Barris reminded us about Tisha B'Av. There is a community commemorative celebration on Monday, this Monday at 7 p.m. at Temple Beth Shalom on Miami Beach. Torah study is tomorrow at 9 with Rabbi Greengrass, followed by Minyan at 10:30 with Rabbi Kleppe. And let me see, congratulations to Ella again. I am sure you will have a much easier time on your first day than your parents will have leaving you there. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Judy, and woohoo, Ella. Anybody else on their way to college soon? Don't worry, nobody's turning off the Find My Phone app on your phone. Don't think that's going to happen. We are closing with Oseh Shalom. If everybody would like to rise, if you're able to, we'd love to join together in the song.
Oseh Shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, והכל ישראל ויאמרו אמן אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
We invite you to turn to your friends and say, Shabbat Shalom.
We were looking at the Orient down to like the Tachana. He's like, that's Machane Yehuda. I'm like, Machane Yehuda's nowhere near here. He's like, no, I can see it from my window. I'm like, no, you can't. He had like no idea what he's talking about. Sharon.
Beautiful.
He doesn't know this.
Nice to hear you like that.
He knows Nesiona and the Army
Thanks for
Days.
encouraging the Vishon.
All right, Yasher Koach.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Did you, I had a feeling, but did you feel well set up for the sermon, for the Devar?
Well, what?
Well set up. That I was like, I'm going to pick Machar.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
you were just there. We've got
Yeah.
Shabbat Chazon. I'm like,